Hello everyone, my name is HUA ZHONG from the University of Sydney. I'm very happy to present my study on Asian Conference on Language Learning 2011. And the study is based on my ongoing PhD research on vocabulary development. Though I'm not be able to present you with a finding today, I'm going to highlight the rationale for this research and outline the methodology design. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to discuss the classroom implication for vocabulary teaching and vocabulary assessment. The title of my presentation is called Learning a Word from Receptive to Productive Vocabulary Use. And before I get into the literature review, I would like to introduce you two key terms for this study. One is receptive vocabulary knowledge, and the second is productive vocabulary knowledge. And here are the summaries of the definitions from the previous research. We can see that receptive vocabulary knowledge is defined as the ability to translate from the target language to the first language. And during this process, it involves the perception of the target language and the reflection of its meaning in the first language. And the other researchers define it as ability to recognize the form or retrieve the meaning in reading and listening. So we could conclude that the receptive vocabulary knowledge is the ability to recognize and to retrieve. Productive vocabulary knowledge is defined as ability to translate from the first language to target language. And this process involves the production or the use of the target language. And similarly, the other researchers also define it as ability to use the word or express the meaning by choosing the right word in speaking and writing. So we could conclude that productive vocabulary knowledge is the ability to produce and to use. And now we have understand the definition of these two concepts. Let's look at some of the previous research related to these two concepts. And the study that look at receptive and productive vocabulary knowledge always is associated with size. There's a very consistent finding that the receptive vocabulary size is larger than the productive vocabulary size among all learners. And this is because the productive vocabulary knowledge is at a more advanced level of the knowledge continuum, and therefore it's often acquired later than the receptive vocabulary knowledge size. And in terms of the relationship between receptive and productive vocabulary knowledge, or the growth of these two vocabulary knowledge sizes, we have also a consistent finding that these two types of knowledge size grows at different pace. And some researchers found that as the development of these two types of vocabulary sizes grows, the gap between receptive and productive vocabulary knowledge size is bigger. And research also find that the receptive vocabulary knowledge grows faster than the productive ones. However, in Zhong and Hirsch 2009, we have a different finding. We found that the productive vocabulary size grows faster than the receptive ones among a group of EFL learners whose language proficiency is intermediate level. And this development is observed within 10 weeks of classroom instruction. And because the classroom intervention was not observed in this study, so we couldn't really explain what leads to this interesting outcome. However, the third category of research, which is the effectiveness of tasks to promote a receptive to productive vocabulary knowledge, could give you some hints. The finding shows that the receptive vocabulary tasks promotes receptive vocabulary use, while the productive tasks promote the productive vocabulary use. In Webb 2005 and 2009 study, he found that the receptive task promotes receptive vocabulary use, which is consistent with the previous finding, but he found that this kind of task particularly promotes receptive meaning use. And he found that productive tasks promote both receptive and productive vocabulary knowledge, and especially in the productive form use. He suggests if only one task is to be used in the classroom, productive tasks outperform the receptive tasks. However, he also suggests that classrooms should actually integrate both receptive and productive tasks so that to promote a comprehensive vocabulary development. Looking at all this previous research, though they're very interesting, they haven't fully explored the interface between receptive and productive vocabulary use, or they couldn't really tell how a word grows from a receptive to productive use. And this question is claimed to be the most intriguing and ambiguous question in vocabulary research by Haatrup and Henriksen in 1999. And my study is going to address this gap. In order to answer this question, we have to understand what is vocabulary knowledge. Henriksen in 1999 presented a three-dimensional construct, so we can see that it's quite complex. The vocabulary knowledge is not only about form and meaning. It is not that simple. She presented that first dimension is partial to precise understanding in terms of meaning. So when we first encounter the word, we might have some rough idea or rough concept of what it means, but it's only through several encounters in different contexts again and again, then we will have a precise understanding of the word's meaning. The second dimension is called the depth dimension, and this dimension is generally defined as quality of word or how well is the word known. There are two approaches to look at the depth dimension. The first is network building approach. It considers vocabulary development as a network building. For example, the word sun is always associated with warm and sky, and these three words are stored together in our brain. So the scholars in this approach believe that the larger the network is, the stronger or the more links there are between the words, the deeper you have on vocabulary knowledge. The second approach is called comprehensive approach, which consider vocabulary knowledge, which consider the depth vocabulary knowledge as a subtotal knowledge of many aspects of vocabulary knowledge. And Nation in 2001 gave us a full list of vocabulary knowledge. For example, there's form, meaning, collocation, grammatical functions, and constraints on use. And the third dimension is receptive and to productive vocabulary use. We can see that the first two dimensions is actually associated with comprehension, while the third dimension, receptive to productive, is related to access and control of vocabulary knowledge, and also say use. And Nation said that the vocabulary use is actually the reflection of comprehension. He also mentioned that the receptive vocabulary knowledge should cover all the aspects in the partial to precise and the depth dimension. In other words, we could say that the partial to precise of the dimensions could be mastered at different level: receptive vocabulary use level and productive vocabulary use level. So in order to look at the interface of receptive vocabulary use to productive vocabulary use, we need to include a broader approach to measurement. We have to include the other two dimensions, partial to precise and depth dimension, to our measurement to look at the growth. And these are the aspects I'm going to measure in those two dimensions. Meaning, form, which are the most important aspects in the vocabulary. Collocation, say which two words could go together in a sentence. Association is actually a bit overlapped with the meaning aspect. However, it's a higher level of command of the language. It looks at how a word is associated or linked to the other word, and this aspect will be measured receptively. In the productively measured aspect, I'm going to look at morphological aspect. For example, accept is the verb, where the student will have the ability to change it into a noun, say acceptance. And the other two types of knowledge that I'm going to measure productively is the control productive and free productive knowledge. These two concepts are defined by Lofer in 1999.